When they asked me to come and talk today, I said, what would I talk about? And then I looked at the topic and I said, women, art, and social change. All right. I'm a woman. I think I'm an artist, although my medium is language. I use words. And I have made a portrait of my mother. Her pet name was Bubbles. So I said, and the reason I made this portrait, this tribute to my mother, is that she was a truly extraordinary woman. And I said, what better topic to, speak on than an extraordinary woman who I knew so intimately. And then I thought to myself, it's not, when a woman is extraordinary, she doesn't remain extraordinary on her own. When I looked back, I found that my mother came from an extraordinary woman. She gave birth to me, who I will say that I won't say extraordinary, but I think I am a strong person. And I, in turn, have given birth to two wonderful, strong women. So it's a sort of when you talk about social change, it looks as if strong women give rise to strong women. And it's like that proverb about planting a tree. When you plant a tree, you may not enjoy the fruit, but the tree is there for future generations. And unfortunately, my grandmother, my mother's mother, she planted a tree that she did not get to enjoy because she passed away when she was very young. But I would like to tell you a little bit about her because she's the original strong woman. When she married my grandfather, they were very happy together. They had two children. I'm sorry, the light is in my eyes rather than on. Anyway, I'll try to manage. She married my grandfather. They had two children. They were a very happy family. But then a shadow fell across them. She got tuberculosis. Now, you must remember that this was 1938, and penicillin had not yet come in use. So there was no cure. The only treatment she had was going up into the hills, into Nainital, to the sanatorium there, to breathe the pure air and then come down again. This means that she saw very little of her family. And there's one very sad incident my mother tells me, when her mother was on those few rare occasions at home. And my mother called her own mother auntie. And she says her mother looked so sad and she said, darling, she says, I'm not your auntie, I'm your mother. But, in that moment you could see the suffering, the tragedy that woman had to endure by being separated from her children. But the reason she separated herself is she was so conscious of not passing the disease on to them that she never hugged them, she never kissed them, she kept all her utensils separate. She was so very careful of them. I found a letter written by my grandmother. It's just one letter that I found of hers, which she wrote inviting her brother-in-law and sister-in-law to her birthday. I would like to read this letter to you. It will give you an idea of the kind of person she was. My dear Ben and Myrtle, I know it is rather childish of me informing you both that the 26th will be my birthday, but to tell you the truth, I feel that the occasion is going to be of more importance than in previous years, as I feel that God has been great in His mercy in adding yet another year to my life and showing me the dawn of a new one. So I would like you all to come across in the evening and join us in a little ice cream party just to celebrate the happy occasion. I am also asking Eddie and Florence over, this is the other brother and sister-in-law, as I am sure it would greatly add to the happy occasion if you could all put an end to this long feud which has continued through the past few years. So the two brothers had fallen out and had not been speaking to each other, and she's trying to bring the family together. I know it is very difficult sometimes, seems impossible to forget and forgive past offenses, which have perhaps been unbearably hurtful at times. But if God, our Creator, can forgive us our greatest sins, who are we not to forgive each other? Besides, being part of our religious duty, which of course is a matter which concerns only one's own soul, it is for the sake of the children that I ask you all to forget the past differences, whatever they be, and shake hands and be friends again. After all, we live for their happiness and must consider their feelings. How much longer are they going to witness this unpleasantness? They must grow up in a happy atmosphere, and it will be pleasing to them and us to see you all united again. Besides, it is their lives which we must guide and govern according to the pattern of our own. And through my own experience, I can say that a happy environment plays a great part and influence on a child's life. And do not for a moment think that it would be degrading or below your dignity to do what I am asking you. On the contrary, it would be a most noble act and an act of charity in forgiving each other and forgetting all that is past. I hope that you all will not think me intrusive or take offense at me writing like this to you and also to Eddie, but believe me, it would give us, including the children, happiness to see you all as one again. Life is really too short to quarrel. Yours affectionately, Stella. The birthday she refers to here was her 29th. After her 30th, she refused to go back to Nainital, perhaps sensing that the end was near. One bleak day in November 1941, when only the 8-year-old Charlotte, that's my mother, was home, she began to cough uncontrollably. She called to her daughter and calmly asked her to bring a basin. The child watched as her mother coughed up several basins full of blood and bits of lung. She died later that day. So she was just 30 years old when she died. My mother was only 8. But you can imagine the impact that this strong woman had on that little girl, that my mother grew up to be the kind of person she was. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my mother now. My mother was a very keen scholar. She loved reading. She was very good at her studies. And she was looking forward to graduating, doing her O-levels. Unfortunately, when she was only in class 8, history intervened. 1947. My grandfather, for his own reasons, which I explain in the book, opted for Pakistan, and he came away, and thus the whole family was disrupted. My mother's education was disrupted, and when she finally rejoined her father in Pakistan, she never went back to school. And I asked her one day, I said, "But why on earth didn't you go back to school?" "I don't really know," she replied. "It was such an unsettled time. First, the waiting to go to Pakistan, then coming to Lahore first for a while, and eventually settling in Karachi. There wasn't much money, and anyway, a girl's education was not considered all that important." But the wound went deep. Throughout her life, she was a voracious seeker after knowledge. She read books of all kinds, even delighted in maps. On writing pads and in diaries, she would note down odd bits of information, the names of rivers and their countries, synonyms, even the names of the 7 dwarfs in Disney's Snow White. Every new experience or acquaintance was a source of learning. In her first job at Phipson's, she learned a great deal about fine wines and liquors. At Pakistan Tobacco Company, she educated herself about the history and progress of tobacco growing, which, linked as it is to Virginia and Sir Walter Raleigh, also appealed to her literary mind. In her last job at Sui Gas Transmission Company, she knew all sorts of facts and figures about gas reserves and transmissions. She it was who told her daughter the fascinating fact that natural gas has no smell. The smell is deliberately added as a warning of leakage. So this is my mother, a self-educated woman. Nobody could believe that she was not at least a BA, if not a master's. Such was her command of language, her knowledge, everything. Unfortunately, she could not rise very high in her job because she didn't have the degrees which are bought and sold in Pakistan today. Anyway, she got married. She got married at a very young age to my father, who was, I think, the love of her life, because even though the marriage did not work out, my father was an alcoholic, and She soon realized that, as she told me later, she said, she said, it was a question of either we left him or he dragged us down with him. And she said, I couldn't let that happen to you. So she left. And you know how old she was when she left? She was 25. I was 3. And she walked out on my father, and she struck out on her own, and she lived her life. She never married again, and that is why I say that my father was the love of her life, because she had many men. My mother was not very beautiful, but as you can imagine, she was a very, very attractive woman. She had many suitors, but she could never settle for anyone. I think my father just was the only person for her. Okay. She passed on her love of reading, her love of knowledge to me, and if I am a literature teacher today, it is because of her. She wanted me to go ahead as far as I could in my education. She said, study as much as you want, study any subject you want, do any job you want, it doesn't matter, as long as it makes you happy and it fulfills you. And therefore, I truly can say that I am who I am today because of my mother, because of my strong mother. What else can I tell you about her? My mother was not a materialistic person. She had this little house that she lived in. She was very happy there. She never owned an air conditioner in her life. In the summer, she used to get this terrible rash. So I used to say, now you pack up and come to my house for at least 2 months, the worst months of summer, so that you don't suffer from this rash. She was always very careful with her money because she wanted to be completely independent. That was my mother, always wanting to be completely independent. She taught me so much just by living her life, And I really can't do justice to her in this little talk, but I just think if you want to know more about her, please do read my book. I'm going to just end with, she lived as she wanted to, independent, always. She'd come to my house, she'd stay for 2 months, 3 months, and then she'd say, okay, I'm going home. And I'd say, why are you going home? No, she says, no, I have my own home and I'm going home to it, And that's the way she always was. When she died, we found a letter in her cupboard addressed to us. And it was addressed to my husband and myself. Darling Lynn and Adi, herein under a few requests, behests. And then she wrote a few things of, I want this to go to that one and this to go to that one. And then this is how she ends. Well, my dear ones, I think that's the lot. My only hope is that clearing out what I have won't be too much of a headache and a nuisance. I've tried over the years to minimize what I have, but things still manage to pile up despite my best efforts to clear out stuff from time to time. I can't think of anything more now except to thank you for all the happiness you have given me and to say how much I have and always will love you. You and my beautiful grandchildren will always be in my heart, Mama. So she even left a letter for us to read on her death. She was always thinking of us. And as I say, I have to thank my mother for everything I am today, and I think that my children have to also thank her for whatever I have been able to give them and my students too. It just goes on giving. So if you want to see social change, you need strong women. Thank you so much.